I'm prefacing it with a lot because
Yes.
it's a loaded question.
Yes.
But I would love to know if you think integration was the right solution, maybe, on the other side of, what America, of civil rights.
I assure you that if I ever had an interview where I asked the question, no matter how qualified it was, if I asked the question, was it a mistake to integrate the races in America? That would probably be my last program. We are told all the time that this is a racist country, the United States of America, that it's inherently racist, that there's systemic racism here, that we need to eradicate racism by, well, not quite sure what the solution is for all of the racists who see the racism in the racist country, because all they ever do is look at life through a racist lens. So I'm not going to trust them to solve the so-called racist problem that they continue to see. But the good news is, for all of you who have trouble finding racism on a regular basis, who don't think racism is quite as bad as we're told by our elites in government, academia, and in the entertainment world, I have, in fact, found the racism. In fact, I've found some really, really bad racism that goes all the way back to the dark days of segregation in this country. When we had whites only schools and blacks only schools, whites only. Yeah, I found it. Trevor Noah, the former host of Comedy Central's Daily Show, apparently is an advocate for racism and segregation because he just did this segment on a podcast.
I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go to other places in a different way because Finland ties in. Do you think that integration was the right move? And now I'm separating two things because I know in America people are like, well, of course, I mean, there was racism and there's segregation, and I go, yeah, no, I'm separating them. Let's separate someone being oppressed and someone not being able to get a job and someone not being able to get a bank loan. Let's take all of those, the negative things away, because I'll put myself out personally and say, I think whether we're talking about gifted kids who are anomalous, let's say, to the norm, whether we are talking about, and I mean anything that does not fit into a category, I think the part of the reason Finland is able to do it is because, have you been to Finland?
It's very homogeneous.
I've been to Finland. You know who's in Finland? Finnish people. That's it. And because they're all Finnish, there's an idea of no, we all head in the same direction. We all know what our actions mean. And that's a really powerful thing I've learned in communicating with other people. When I'm in a room with anyone where we start to tie together multiple things. So if I'm in a room with Black people, already there's an implicit trust because we know what certain actions, words, and vibes mean. And then you're in a room with another African. Already. This person. Now, even if you shout at me, I know what your shout means. The same way an Italian knows what an Italian shout means.
Yeah.
Right? I know I'm prefacing it with a lot because it's a loaded question.
Yes.
But I would love to know if you think integration was the right solution, maybe.
Okay, we're going to hear the answer. But let me just say that there was a whole lot in that question. A whole lot, by the way, with regard to double standards and a whole lot of, implied racism that an interviewer or podcaster like I would never get away with employing. And I assure you that if I ever had an interview where I asked the question, no matter how qualified it was, if I asked the question, was it a mistake to integrate the races in America? That would probably be my last program. Probably. I mean, I might if I really wanted to die on that hill. By the way, also worth noting, I would never ask that question. Because I actually agree with the basic premise of the civil rights movement of the 60s. Most liberals don't. Most liberals don't. When a progressive, anti-racist, Ibram X. Kendi, Trevor Noah, radical leftist in America today reflects on Martin Luther King's words during his famous speech at the Civil Rights March at the Lincoln Memorial, saying our American dream is in fact to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. They think that's the wrong lesson. And that's how you get a Trevor Noah even being able to formulate the thought process to ask the question, was it a mistake to integrate the races in America? And by the way, I just want to be clear here, because if you heard the way the question was premised, there's two points I want to make. And don't let me forget the Finnish part of it. But the other part of that question, the way it was premised, if people have been discriminated against and they haven't been able to get a job opportunity or to get a loan, well, that's one thing. But beyond that, when we Black people get into a room together, we have a comfort level. If I'm in a room with an African, I have a comfort level with them because he's from South Africa, of course. I mean, you can't stop an apartheider from apartheiding, apparently. So the implication in his question is really about us being able to be in our spaces, giving us comfort and us power and us the ability to keep those people out from Trevor Noah's perspective. But if the people who are in the supremacy role in a society, if they try to do it, well, that's a problem. So in other words, the segregation is only allowed to work in one direction, in the direction Trevor Noah and his panelists decide it can work. But secondly, the Finnish question is fascinating to me, because he picked a very white country, right? Let's face it. I mean, there's white in Europe, and then there's Scandinavian white, and then there's Scandinavian white, and then there's Finland. All right. I'm kidding. As far as I know, Norway and Sweden are just as white. I could be wrong. But he picked a very white country to make his case about Finnish people all wanting to achieve what Finnish people have in common and the goals that the Finns want for the Finns, right? And it's amazing to me that if you take that thought process and just translate it to America, I mean, what he's saying is, wow, it's really powerful and really beneficial and really fantastic when one nation of one people all work together for the best possible outcome for the people of that country. All those Finns doing things with other Finns for the benefit of Finns to make a better Finland. And one must wonder, Trevor, if you could finally make that final leap there, connect the dots and recognize that our country would be great, not based on petty, nonsensical racial identity that you're trying to throw in our face all the time, but instead look at each other as Americans working together what's best for America with fellow Americans. And if you can make that leap, it's not even a big leap, pal. It's frankly a baby step because you were so close. But instead you get bogged down in stupid, asinine Neanderthal thinking of skin color, when you could be thinking about, yes, our national identity, what's best for us as an American family, regardless of something petty and stupid like skin color. But you're still stuck there. You still got the intellectual, college degree, Ibram X. Kendi, anti-racist ally kind of mentality, that the only racism that really works is racism that we get to employ now, as you'll now discover when you hear the answer to that convoluted question.
On the other side of, what America, of civil rights.
Yeah. No, I don't. And I don't think it's actually that controversial when if you understand that segregation and integration weren't the only options. Like those are within those two options, it may seem like integration is the more progressive. Like, of course, we don't want segregation. But again, when you're being integrated into institutions, into a culture that's a supremacist culture, that's a culture that feeds off of hierarchy, that feeds off of insecurity, anxiety, why are we being integrated into that?
Yeah. Martin Luther King weeps, absolutely weeps. It's funny. Wasn't Barack Obama integrated into that white hierarchical societal construct? He seemed to do okay. You know what's remarkable is that Barack Obama agrees with that. I would bet you any money that Barack Obama agrees with that. He wouldn't say it. He would have never gotten elected if he had said it, because it's antithetical to what Americans believe. I don't know what's happened to the progressive left in this country. They're hardly progressive. That is the most regressive thinking that you'll ever hear, and the most damaging, by the way. But there are some Democrats who see it. There are some Democrats who lament this. There are some Democrats who are terrified at the future of their party if this kind of mentality takes over. Here's one of them, James Carville. He was just lamenting it the other day. Take a listen.
To make a disappointing observation, I think these people, the most racist thing that I hear is when people say communities of color or people of color, because that assumes that everybody that is not white is the same, which is that, like, it's horribly, I think it's racist to say, well, Filipinos are the same as Hondurans, are the same as Nigerians, are the same as Indonesians is absurd. And they just keep using this language, and I think they're too naive to know how stupid it is. That's my own view.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the data will show you that it's just not accurate, right? I mean, you look at where some of our Muslim American communities voted, where some of our South Asian American families voted. I mean, it doesn't work, at least in a state like Michigan. It's like a giant mixing bowl on political preferences. And if you think that you understand a community because of their country of origin, you haven't run in a swing state. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and it's a great point that Carville was making there, that the most racist notion is this term communities of color. I'm going to take care of community, assuming that every community of color has the same priorities. But actually, James, you need to take it one step further, because you see, we conservatives, we traditional Americans, we don't look in people in these categories as even broadly as you look at them. James's complaint is that Democrats use the term communities of color, assuming that Black communities and Latino communities and Asian communities, et cetera, all had the same interests. Well, here's what's really going to blow your mind, James. The fact is, Black person A is not the same as Black person B or Black person C. There's no such thing as the Black community when it comes to solving problems that people within that community may be experiencing, because each person experiences life and the world differently. It's almost like God made us all as individuals. It's almost like we're all individual human beings with our own life experiences, our own morals, our own brains, our own souls, our own sense of destiny and responsibility to our nation, regardless of our skin color. James is so close too. He might get there. Or he might just do what the organized left in America tends to always do, which is divide us along whatever line they want, whether it's race, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's religion, whether it's sex, whether it's wealth, and the false construct of class. It doesn't matter. See, if we're divided, then we'll vote their way, they think. That's what brings Tom Hanks to Saturday Night Live, to put on a MAGA hat and pretend like, how those Trump voters are. They don't want to shake a Black man's hand on Saturday Night Live. But see, it didn't work, and it wasn't funny, because as the great Rush Limbaugh used to say, humor only works when it's grounded in truth. When there's some element of human truth that we can all relate to and see something taken to an absurd position, then it becomes funny. But it wasn't funny to see Tom Hanks wearing a MAGA hat, not wanting to shake a Black man's hand because Donald Trump just won the presidency with the largest number of Black voters for a Republican in multiple generations. Since 1964, Donald Trump just won the presidency with the most multiracial voter base you have ever seen for a Republican president. So coming off of that kind of diverse victory, Slipping into the same old tired patterns just don't work anymore. But I'll hand it to Trevor Noah. I'll hand it to James Carville even. Stick with it, guys. Seriously, I'm sure you're onto something. I'm sure you're going to make a difference. And if you keep going down this path, I'm sure your party is not going to win another national election in a couple of decades. Have you seen the news from economists forecasting a depression, not a recession, a depression by 2030? Here's what's happening. We have a perfect storm brewing. We've got Social Security and Medicare hitting a breaking point already, and the largest generation of retirees in America hitting retirement all at the same time. Plus, you got a smaller workforce, meaning a smaller tax base. That plus the growing national debt, the rising cost of living, you see the problem we're in right now, right? So you can either sit back and wait for Congress to fix it, or you can actually do whatever you can to protect your family's future. Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. It doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. You're going to get a free info kit on gold the second you do that, okay? You text my name, you get this free info kit. What else do you get for free? You're going to get a book called The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era, and it's got a foreword written by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation for any of this. We just want to give you information. So text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. Thank you in advance for doing that today.